crepes. At least the easy part is mixing the batter. You will need a blender. Then I've got 2 1/4 cups of whole milk at room temperature. If you forget to take it out, just hit it for about 30 seconds in the microwave. You don't want it hot, just cool to the touch. Then 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, I'm going to mix that up a little bit. The butter's not so hot when I put the flour in. This is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I don't have to sift it. The nice thing about making this crepe batter in a blender is that it'll pulverize any flour pieces. So I would not recommend making the batter without a blender. I've tried it, not too good. 3 whole eggs at room temperature as well. Put your cover on, and you're just going to pulse it until it's completely liquefied. Flour always ends up on the side of the blender, so I'm just going to help it out a little bit. This batter does need to sit for at least 45 minutes to an hour. I poured the batter into a 4-cup measuring pitcher, and I'm just going to skim the bubbles off the top. That way the crepes look pretty. If you don't take the bubbles out, the cooked crepe will have lots of bubbles in it. Alright, and we'll just let this sit for about 45 minutes, then we'll get to making some crepes. Before we get started, I wanted to show you my setup that is to the right of my crepe machine. It just makes preparing and cooking the crepes so much more efficient, and because it doesn't take long to cook each of them, you just need to have everything ready. So you can see I've got a round cake pan off to the far right, and that's where I lay out the cooked crepes. And to the left and top of the screen, I have the crepe batter spreader, which is sitting in a tub of water, and some napkins, wet napkins, to wipe the spreader because some of the batter will begin to collect on it. Then a plate with dry napkins to clean off the crepe machine. Sometimes it gets a little messy with bits and pieces of cooked crepe batter. And then at the bottom left of the screen is the spatula that's used to flip the crepes, and then a bowl of vegetable oil that I use to grease the crepe machine. As you can see, I have my crepe machine on top of the stove. It's a flat glass top stove. It makes cleaning up a breeze, and it's also under my vent because it gets a bit smoky or steamy as the crepes cook. And to the far left, I have the big pitcher of batter, and then a small pitcher that's filled with just under 1/2 cup of batter. That way I know I can pour all of that less than 1/2 cup of batter onto the crepe machine and not make much of a mess. If you pour batter directly from the large pitcher, you could potentially put too much, and then it's gonna run everywhere. It takes a bit of practice to contain the batter on the machine, but even if it gets a bit messy, it's still large enough and yummy enough to eat. For videotaping purposes, since I do all the cooking and the recording, I've moved my batter over to the stovetop so I don't have to reach too far. But I wanted to show you the type of crepe machine I have. It's a T-Bos, T-I-B-O-S. I ordered on Amazon. Supposedly they imported it from France. At any rate, I love this machine, and while the directions say put it on medium, I found that cooking it on a heat any higher than number 1 here simply burns the crepes too much. So I keep it there. There's no on or off button. You just plug or unplug it to turn it off. Plug it in to turn it on. The crepe machine is preheated. Now I'm just brushing this with a little bit of vegetable oil. I've used olive oil before. It gives a bit of a, I wouldn't say an off taste, just at least with vegetable oil there's no taste to it. Okay, that's good. Now this crepe spreader I've had since Germany 13-14 years ago, and I've been waiting and waiting forever to get a crepe machine. So it takes a little bit of practice. I'm not perfect yet, and just kind of pour it on, and then you start going around. And you have to be fast because it will cook. And again, to me it doesn't have to be perfectly round, just big enough to fit filling in. There you go. And then this goes back into my container of water, which those rectangular tubs of cold cuts, that's what I use. It works really well. The machine itself came with a long reservoir to put water in, but it wasn't functional for me. These crepe tools can be found online if you wanted to Google and buy there. So as this is cooking, I just look at the edges to see how brown it's getting. I fill my little measuring cup with more batter, and you can see the steam here. I've seen some people use the long cake spatulas. Find them at your local cake decorating or arts and crafts supply shop, but it's just as easy to order this online when it gets all grungy. Like I said, I got my crepe batter spreader in Germany, and I've been waiting forever to get a crepe machine. You go around the edges and loosen up, and you can have a peek, see how brown it is at the bottom. You want to get most of the crepe onto your spatula and flip it. See how easy that is, as opposed to putting the batter on or in a saute pan and swirling it around and such. I tried once making crepes in a saute pan. It wasn't as fun as using this machine with the batter spreader. My kids love it. My husband loves it. We've put Nutella, strawberries and banana, and whipped cream's our favorite filling, but I've also tried a sunny side up egg, and I forget what else I put in the crepe for my husband. And he liked it, and you can actually cook it right up here. Okay, so this is done. Move it. And I'm just going to transfer this to that round cake pan. It was a 10-inch cake pan. And so here's that napkin. Just clean off any crumbs. You don't have to do it all the time, but a little bit of vegetable oil. I suppose you can use butter as well, but just the oil doesn't solidify as it sits at room temperature. Okay, again. You have a really light hand to do this, which I don't, but the spread's big enough to make a good sized crepe, so sometimes if there's a little bit dripping and a little bit of batter left, I'll fill in some of the holes. There are people who can make perfectly circular, straight edge crepes. This works for me, you know. Try not to beat myself up that it's not in a perfect circle, but it works. It serves well. It serves its purpose well. These cooked crepes do keep well in the fridge, so when we have leftovers, the kids can make more crepes the next day. If you wanted to make more, one batch of this batter makes 7 large-sized crepes. And if you wanted to make more crepes, you would simply make 3 batches. Use the same blender. I've done it before. Use the same blender and pour the batter into a larger bowl. And I still used my, big cup big pitcher, little measuring pitcher setup. It's just easier that way. If it ever tears, I don't know if you saw that it tore a little bit, just press it together, and as the underside, the second side cooks, it'll patch itself up. Now comes the delicious part. So you can see I've stacked my crepes on this round cake pan. I'm just going to spread some Nutella, and we're going to fold this burrito style, right? Alright, maybe a little too much Nutella. Okay, some strawberries. And a little bit of banana. Oops. Okay, and whipped cream. Now I've filled a crepe while it was on the crepe machine, but I didn't like it because then the filling would be hot too. So I like a warm crepe and cold filling. Roll it over. Fold it like a burrito. And my daughter seems to think that you need some chocolate glue. So she just gets more chocolate. Not necessary, but just for her. And then I'll set this aside and eat it in just a minute. Okay, I wanted to show you something. So to store this, I just fold it into fourths and then put it in a Mexican tortilla warmer, which I'll show you in a bit. You can see a little bit of each here, and then in here. Now this tortilla container works well for crepes. I don't think one more will fit inside, so I'll put that in another container. And then tortilla warmer, press it down. And there you go. It'll keep warm for a bit. So the instructions, if you get one of these things, to reheat it if the contents gets cold. See, I have some wax paper with some napkins on the bottom, because as the water collects in here, you don't want the crepes to get all mushy on the edges. So by having a layer of napkins at the bottom and wax paper, you'll reduce that and you will not ruin your crepes. But if this gets cold, take everything out, moisten the napkin, and put everything back in, including the wax paper. Heat this whole contraption in your microwave for 30 seconds and then cover it, and that'll keep it warm. Back to my crepe. I'm gonna get the first bite. This is so delicious. Strawberry, banana, whipped cream, chocolate. Mmm.